no matter what you show them as far as data. That's
Okay, gentlemen, this is it. This would be, are we going to do just hunt 1331, or are we doing both 1331 and non-resident? What do you suggest is the easiest way to do this?
Again, it's such a mixed bag, such a hodgepodge of directional changes and inconsistent approaches that I think we might be better off doing it hunt at a time, starting with 1331.
Okay, let's do 1331.
Resident and non-resident, correct?
We can do resident and non-resident?
Yeah, we can
tie both those together?
Yeah, what we'll have to do is we'll have to, well, how will we do that? I'll have to index the non-resident off the resident that we come up with here.
I don't think it's really going to matter. You're going to have to do math either way. I mean, pretty much the ability for anything that you've seen in the past for me to do is thrown out the window. So it's manual modifications. So whether you're wanting to stay true to the demand split by weapon class, I mean, I think some of them, actually, I think most people are in agreement with that. And then we just have to worry about the 90-10 split.
Okay. Couldn't we do the resident quotas and just base go as close to 10% as possible?
Yeah.
Index that up.
Well, no, because we have guided.
Oh, yeah. Right.
One of the see, the guided hunt has already been taken out. That was 311 tags statewide. So we can't just simply take
10%, yeah.
110% above the resident and get the non-resident, because it's already been clouded by tags being taken out. Well,
we can subtract that.
Now we have right here, red and left.
Yeah, that formula for percent.
Yeah, I mean, we know what. I don't have the final though for which units. Do you have that? For the non-resident guided sales by unit.
Computer, yeah.
I don't have that.
Yeah. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to come to agreement on the resident quotas. Then we'll have to take out by unit the landowner tags and put the remaining percentage in those hunts as 10% minus the landowner tags, and do it that way. But yeah, we'll just have to start with the resident ones, and then it'll take us some time through another break to try to get those links and formulas to fill in the non-resident ones.
Okay.
But it'll basically be
so
10%.
we'll do all hunts, all resident hunts, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll do all non-resident hunts. Is that what you're?
Yeah, let's try to do that.
Okay.
Well, and you could make a motion that if you take care of the resident hunts,
Just make all the non-resident hunts
10%,
corresponding
10%, including and accommodating the non-resident guided
The
tags.
1235 hunt, yeah.
So you could make a motion, and then we could do that later.
You just do the calculation and,
Yeah, after the fact.
One question, aren't we over 100 tags short on the non-resident already, right now? The proposed quota.
That's probably what we're talking about with the 1235 hunt. We have the non-resident guided hunt that isn't reflected here. So there are other 322 tags, I believe. 311 tags going to non-residents that aren't reflected in here that make up that the remaining part of that percentage.
Okay.
okay, hunt 1331.
Yeah.
Do you want to just have the cabs come up and explain what
Yeah,
they're
I
doing?
mean, we obviously are, again, supporting our proposed recommendation. Certainly, with the exception of Humboldt County, where we've discussed, but I don't suspect anyone's going to come up asking for more tags today. In the event they do, we might have some concerns, but less tags isn't going to be an issue. I mean, biologically, we're not going to worry about fewer tags.
Okay. So, with that said, then let's go ahead and have the cabs come on up and start telling us what you have in mind. And remember, I just want to remind everybody that I did kind of commit and set out an email that said please provide us with with backup for your position and why it is that you want a reduction. Looks like all of them are reductions. So, okay, who wants to start? Tom. And then Corey.
I'm on a roll here today. So. Humboldt County, Tom Castanelli for the record, for Humboldt County. Our recommendation, we've heard it, is to take all the areas in Humboldt County, that's 031 through 035, and 041 and 04 through 046, and set to 2011 quotas. I've talked with Pershing County on 041, 046. They agree, especially now that we've put some extra youth tags in there, that should be done. With the exception of Humboldt of 051 to be set as a 25% reduction off of last year's quotas. I don't need to go in unless you want more information. We've talked about it.
Yeah, no, I think this is the exception, and actually the department has concurred based on that they don't feel comfortable that their model has got all the inputs correct, and so.
And for that reason, I will not be coming up in front of you again. We don't need to go over this every time. It'll be for all the rest of the hunts too.
Okay.
Can you tell Tom leaves? Could I ask a question?
Sure.
In terms, and maybe Tony, this is something for you too. In terms of 033, I know that's a split between the counties, with part of it being Washoe, part of it being Humboldt. So
the majority being Humboldt.
Yeah. I mean, do we have a sense? Are we more comfortable with our numbers there, or is it?
Yes, we are.
And Tom, you're still recommending the?
We're still recommending because 033 is our premier trophy unit, and we did have decent success rates right at what this year we meet. Our success rates met what we were expecting from a unit in 033. So our recommendation was to keep, the Humboldt County recommendation was to keep that last year's quotas. We also have Washoe. I think they voted to, and I shouldn't speak for this, but they voted to keep the department's recommendation.
Yeah.
So those would be the two that we did move to. Any other questions?
Yes. So 213 and 24, is that what we're talking about in area 051? Or do you have another number?
I have another number. I didn't have, it's a 25% reduction. I'd have to go back and get my book.
I was just looking at 213, give or take a little bit, or 24.
Not off of this year's, off of last year's recommendations.
That's why I'm saying those numbers to.
Well, after last year's recommendations or last year's quota?
Last year's quota.
Last year's recommendation.
Last year's quota.
Nice
That's what he
try.
said, right? So,
I play poker with this guy and I never win. I can see why.
213 and 24 is what I got. Anybody get a different number?
Nope, works for me.
Look at my book. I have them written down there. In the,
Yeah, we'll go.
in the quarterly.
051.
Yeah. I was just doing the math in my head, but
What do our data show? What's that?
Did you say 20?
Our data week and 3-3?
214 and 24.
Okay, so Mike, are you guys okay on those changes? Okay.
Okay. Got the
213 and 24. Thank you.
For the record, Corey Laddle, Lincoln Cab. I'll pass these out. I think there's about 11 of them here. It's just a little chart. It's going to kind of explain our reasoning, what we did at our cab meeting, and it's kind of to give the short summary. It's taking a look at what we had last year, what we've had the last several years in terms of harvest, trophy, blah blah blah, moisture, and looking what was proposed and kind of putting the numbers together, and then of course incorporating all the social issues that come into play. If you kind of look right at the center, down column E, down in the light shaded gray, there's the estimated pre-hunt buck-to-doe ratio for each unit that we're recommending changes on. And if we start up in 221, 223, it's 60 bucks. Okay. Socially, we discussed it earlier with cow hunts, things that go on in that unit, the dynamics that we deal with in that unit, to try to shoot for a 30, a 30 ratio on that. It just doesn't seem like we're going to get where we're going to get within 1 year. So what we talked about initially with that unit is, hey, let's take this in steps. So, and that kind of followed suit with the other units. And so if you go into the darker gray area there, and just above the darker gray area on the unit 221, 223, our target was 37 bucks on the post hunt. Okay, and we ended up plugging that into the model. Our biologist, I mean, he knows our deer just as good as anybody. He is in tune with what goes on in those units. He shot it in, and these are the numbers. Bar none, we think those ratios should stay up in the low to mid 30s. There again, we're talking social dynamics, we're talking trophy quality, we're talking opportunity, we're talking all these different things that come into play now. You know, we reference back to the 80s and all these great, wonderful numbers that we talk about. It's a lot different today than it was 30 years ago. We're not dealing with herds of 12,000 elk in the state. We weren't dealing with that at that time. We're not dealing with these massive amounts of wilderness area that are inaccessible to a number or a high majority of hunters now. So there's all these other things that come into play when it comes to, okay, we're going to turn 800 tags loose in a unit, and everybody goes, first thing that happens is the success it'll drive down, and that drives the model as well. That drives next year's numbers. That drives the year after that's numbers. So we were trying to take everything and take it a step back. There are moderate increases with everything we're going with. If you kind of go down there in 221, 223, our 4-year average buck-to-doe ratio has been 33. 4-point or better harvest has been 48%. We're trying to achieve that 35. We're trying to maintain the quality and provide the opportunity. We feel we do that very, very well in that unit. The youth hunt's successful in that, and especially the late hunt, and that's a really sought-after hunt. We're looking at approximately a 30% increase, and you can look at those numbers down that right-hand column where column G, where it gives our recommendations. So we're looking at 560 on the any legal weapon early hunt in 221, 223, and 30 for the 221, 223 late hunt. If you go to 231, similar situation. Pre-hunt, 53 bucks. We're looking at a post hunt of 37, and to get to 37, this is what the model kicked out. We're trying to harvest 177 on the any legal weapon hunt. Similar to 231, we're faced with multiple elk hunts. It gets congested. The best areas are usually the ones that are the most crowded, as most people know. We also deal with 50-plus landowner tags in that unit, which there again provide another avenue of trophy quality and things that are sought after. Another social challenge that we face. There's a reason. Landowner tags in 231 are going from anywhere from $5,500 to $6,500 a piece, and there's a waiting list a mile long. The junior average has been high. It's exceptionally high in 231s. We think that's a good thing. We keep moving the right direction. We just don't think we can take a full step, the other direction and get where we want to get in the next 2 years. If you go down to 241 through 245, pre-hunt 64, it's pretty high. We're actually in that unit, it's a different beast. We're trying to shoot for 40 bucks on the post hunt. Same kind of scenario. Your averages on buck to doe are the high 30s. 4-pointer better harvest is 70%. It's really high. We're trying to stay with 40 in that unit, maintain the trophy quality, provide the opportunity, and your junior success is really, really high. So these are all good problems. They're all good things that we want to maintain. The reason we want to stay at 40 in that unit is because it's such a vast unit. There are multiple challenges, a lot of wilderness area. The numbers are lower. The populations are spotty in certain areas, and it is a challenge. And the guys like them bucks. They like to hunt bucks. They like to see 20 bucks during a hunt and be able to take their pick. And we realize that, having more bucks per 100 does doesn't necessarily make higher trophy quality or, higher status in the Boone and Crockett record book, but it does give you that better cross-section of older age bucks if you have a few more bucks in the herd. And that leads to hunter quality too, or hunt quality. Real quick, I don't want to take up too much time. I know everybody's, itching to get out of here. I'll answer any questions if you guys have them.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. Thanks.
Thomas Brunson, White Pine Cab. Just following up, Corey, I'll start with Unit 221 through 223. The estimated population from 2009 to 2012 it was 4,900, 4,900, 4,500, 4,400. The buck to doe ratios over the same stretch, actually adding a year going back to 2008, it was 41, 33, no postseason flight in 2010, and then down to 30. So from looking at it from our perspective, when you look at those numbers, both the population and the buck ratios observed, obviously I don't know what the model said, but they're both on a downhill slide with the tag numbers that have already been allocated in there. So increasing that to a 840 level, we don't feel, we feel already that the population's not growing. So unless we have some kind of an additional mortality factor in the model we're not seeing, in our opinion, we're killing all of our recruitment as it is. So growing that herd doesn't seem like that can be accomplished, with that kind of a buck quota, as well as we got all those different social factors that we again, everybody at the White Pine County meeting was extremely concerned with. One was the potential to impact the success rate, which has been falling the last 3 years. It's been kind of going down. Last year it was really low, down around 25%, which is not good in that area. And we felt that you put that kind of tag numbers out there, it's going to drive hunter success that much lower. So the next year, in order to try and climb down to this 30 buck per 100 doe ratio, it's going to knock down success even more. So then we're going to have even more tags next year. I'm afraid it's going to just be a continuing spiral. That's just it crests that level of the amount of hunters in the field. It's just going to all of a sudden just drive down the harvest, the success rate. 131 through 134, it's the only population we have that's been a steady increase over the last 5 years, and the quota recommendations in that unit have been going up, but on a lot slower scale. and we have reason to believe that that's, you know, part of why it's going up, because the quota levels have been just slowly climbing up, not jumping up, you know, by big numbers. I gave you guys all a little sheet of some information I picked up from a biologist friend of mine in Utah, just to compare the buck ratios versus the amount of does and fawns that are being born. Just find that paper. I averaged it all because you guys got a lot of numbers you're looking at, but on their general season units, they have 9 general season units in Utah since 05 to 2011. The average buck ratio on those general season units is 19 bucks per 100 does, and on their limited entry units, there's 8 limited entry units, and on those the average buck to doe ratio is 38. And as you flip back to the fawns per 100 does, of course this isn't quite the same as ours because ours is fawns per 100 adults, but just a comparison on doe to fawn ratios. On the general season units, their average fawn ratios are 51. And on the limited entry units, their average fawn ratios are 55. So with that increased buck ratios, it doesn't seem like recruitment's better on the limited entry units, where they have, you know, a lot higher buck ratio than what they do on the general season units. So in a herd that's not approaching any kind of a limiting factor, which we don't think our units over in eastern Nevada are, we just don't think that, you know, maintaining 30 bucks per 100 does is going to be that beneficial to the fawn production in those areas. And as far as units 111 and 114, 115, our board as well as the citizens were pretty concerned. We haven't had a buck ratio put into the model since 2009, and Kurt said in the meeting that all the deer surveying they've been doing has been in conjunction with the elk, where they're not even specifically looking at deer. They're just kind of, whatever deer they pick up, they're just kind of adding it in. And we don't feel comfortable making those big jumps in that unit without a little more information. But the buck ratios, I can't go against the department. They're probably right on what they say. I spend 200 and some days out there, and I'm not at all, you know, trying to tell them they're wrong there. I just feel that we can manage those units over there for a little higher buck to doe ratio and not have any biological impact as far as fawn ratios production. So we were recommended, White Pine County, we recommended to stick with what the department proposed last year, their 2011 quota recommendations. And that's really about it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Gary Coleman, Pershing County Cab. We got a little different situation up in Pershing and Humboldt. You know, we've got a small little herd, and 4346 is part of Humboldt County. And over the last several years, we've had pretty high success in the youth and overall hunter success. And the population of the bucks, you know, our last post-flight survey was 27 bucks per 100, and we've always tried to manage that unit 30 bucks per 100. And last year, we've noticed even a, you know, more deficiency in the bucks. I mean, we're starting in June, and I've got 10 guys in the field from June, archery hunting and guiding all fall and lion hunting, and we've just seen the overall number of bucks come down even more from that. So we just want to put it back down to last year's, you know, quotas. What we had for tags for last year. We don't want to cut it, but we want it to taper off. So that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, Jim Evans from Eureka Cab. I've got a summation that we put together, and the board would like me to read this into the record, and I'll provide you with a copy of that. Commissioners and ladies and gentlemen, we had our meeting on the 3rd of May. We had a number of sportsmen in attendance as we anticipated to review the quota recommendations for the 2012 season. Our board acted on all big game recommendation quotas proposed by NDOW other than the deer quota recommendations proposed for other counties. We accepted the recommended quotas for antelope, bear, bighorn sheep, elk, and Rocky Mountain goat as proposed. We do have some concern regarding the proposed 2012 deer quota for Management Area 14, Units 141 through 145, which includes the Diamond Range, the Cortez Range, the Roberts Mountains, Prospect, Spring Valley Range, and Dave Keene Mountain. The proposed tag allocation for 12 is 1,352 tags. This is an 820 tag increase above the 2011 quota, which is a 154% increase. The proposed increase was justified based upon moderate levels of fawn recruitment over the last 3-year period. As most of you are aware, we are still struggling with a relatively low base population level estimated at some 4,800 animals. The overall trend indicates a steady decline from 1985 when the base population was estimated at 10,500 animals. I did not research the archive data for periods 1955 through 1985, but I can say without question that the base population levels during that era were significantly greater. We feel somewhat confident with the current population dynamics assessment relative to age class distribution and the buck-doe fawn-adult ratios. Our primary concern relates again back to the base population assessment, which we feel is measurably lower than the projected summation. Lower baseline population indices would have a significant effect on the proposed quotas. As an example, if the base level were at 3,000 to 4,000 animals versus an approximate 5,000 animal herd, and assuming the same population dynamic structure. I have not had the opportunity to review statistics relative to hunters' days spent in the field, but we are presuming that more time has been required for the successful harvest over the last decade as a result of the drastic decline in the base population numbers during 1995 through 2000. And the approximate decline was from 7,900 animals to 5,100 animals during that time frame. That's again 95 through 2000. In conversation and communicate with a number of sportsmen over the last 3 years, both resident and non-resident, we've received many comments indicating that they're not seeing the deer numbers as compared to early years, and that harvesting a mature buck is becoming more challenging. The positive side of the equation indicates that we still have a good harvest rate for the rifle hunt, with an estimated 47% success during the years 2000 through 2012. And we do have a strong buck ratio estimated at 36 as a result of the December 2011 survey. We have yet some substantial challenges ahead of us during the summer and fall of 2012. Presently, we're experiencing both record and near-record drought conditions throughout Eureka County. The majority, if not all, of the ephemeral drainages within the Diamond Range have dried up. Perennial spring and seep production surface flows are declining at a very fast rate, and it is estimated that the surface flows may be limited to the only, basically the upper elevation regimens during this summer and fall. Increased competition for forage and high utilization within the riparian zones is expected. Currently, the Diamond Range HMA complex is estimated at 500% above AML, some 600 feral/wild horses above the AML management objective for the west slope, and this does not include the Diamond Range East slope in the more recent survey. During mid-April, the BLM Battle Mountain District recently notified all permittees and interested public that the environmental assessment of the District Drought Management Preliminary Environmental Assessment is available for review, with the comment period ending on the 16th of May. The EA was prepared to analyze a range of drought response alternatives that may be used to mitigate the effects of drought and to address emergency situations. These include partial or complete closures of allotments, partial reduction in animal unit months, change in season of use, reduced grazing duration, change in livestock management practices, temporary fencing of critical areas, targeting animals or targeting grazing of monotypic invasive annual communities, and temporary change in kind or class of livestock, temporary water hauls, temporary above-ground pipelines, and wild horse and burro removals. Our Eureka Cab, being again somewhat concerned relative to base population estimates and having had the opportunity to hear from a number of local sportsmen, non-resident sportsmen, and the community at large, recommend a static quota for the 2012 season. We are requesting that the 2012 quota remain the same as structured for the 2011 season with no modifications. Again, thank you for this opportunity to comment, and I'll field any questions that you might have at this time.
Mr. Rain.
Mr. Evans, now, can you tell us a little bit about how you came upon some of this data and who was that came upon the data? Tell us a little about that.
Well, the board, most of the data that was compiled, I provided that for the board. I'm a resource consultant, as you know, and I spend a lot of time in management areas 14 and 15. I'm working on a monitoring initiative right now in management area 14 and 15, the Simpson Parks and Diamond Range, relative to mitigation initiatives associated with the 3M plan out there. I can assure you that the majority of the data is solid data. I gathered an extensive amount of data from obviously the BLM, and there is a major concern this year relative to habitat implications in Management Unit 14. Right now, static or levels right at 4,000 to 5,000 animals. We're assuming, or we estimate that we could certainly increase our buck ratios as a result of a static harvest, but we don't think that the increased ratios would have a negative effect, or in essence, with the existing population at 48 or 5,000 head. And the board, as you very well know, the board is very conservative. The folks out in Eureka are more so concerned about stabilizing the existing population versus providing an opportunity for increased tags. And with a low population, we're in the ebb of the trough right now. It's hard for us to justify from a social standpoint any increased tags. It's not socially acceptable at this point in time. This is a very controversial issue, as you well know.
You, as a resource professional, have spent a certain amount of time in the hills, and what have you come up to? Are we at carrying capacity in Area 14, or?
Well, I can qualify Area 14 from the standpoint of deer winter range. I mean, we don't have the limitations in 14 as compared to certainly Area 6. The habitat is there. I don't believe that is necessarily limiting at this point in time. There's going to be a lot of competition out there this year because of the drought. We've got a tremendous number of horses on the range. We're excessively above AML. There's going to be a measurable or significant competition within the riparian areas. And I don't know, I would assume that there will be some measurable, I'm not going to say significant, but I would anticipate measurable effect on fawn recruitment as a result of drought, and certainly some of the older age class animals in the population today. Where that'll go, I can't. I'm not an expert to project or predict where that number will be come Christmas of 2012.
Okay. Any further comment about any other cabs? Any other cabs on 1331?
Thanks again for the opportunity to talk to you guys about this.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and
fall down.
Go ahead and bring it back to commission. Oh, public comment, yes. Public comment.
Stay away from that thing. Bob Bruner, speaking for the coalition. Larry left, and he asked me to speak for the coalition, so I've got kind of two parts because I wasn't ready for that. We do want to say, as a coalition, we recommend the biologist's data, and we would like to approve what they've done. Just as we heard, the range is in a tough position. Okay, they're pulling cattle or they want to pull horses, and these guys want to, you see that there's a kind of a, okay, we can have the deer die on the mountain, or we can go ahead and take them because this is a natural resource, a renewable resource. You can't save them like marbles or pennies in a jar. Okay, you have to go with the professionals. They don't get stock options if they cook the books. This is their job. They're a professional. You don't go into a mechanic and he says your tranny's shot, and you say no, fix the brakes. Okay, they're the professionals, and I'd like to thank them and the department. I don't think we could have had 2 more professional people to represent this state and the deer population. We're all looking for those kind of deer, and with their data shows that if we're taking bucks and we get it down to 30, we can have more deer on the range and more big deer by taking these off. Thanks.
Okay.
Kerry Jellison with G&J Outdoors. I'm an outfitter. First of all, I'd like to thank you guys. Mike, thanks for the help you gave me this week. I'll try not to beat you up too bad. I wouldn't want your guys' job for all the money in the world. The first thing is, when you guys started with the that PowerPoint presentation or whatever, you said at the end of the season, you said the buck ratio would be 25 to 100 on that presentation. It did. It said 25 to 100. I just didn't know, because in here on the deal you guys sent out, it says 30 to 100. I just didn't know what the difference was there on that PowerPoint presentation when you started with.
30. It's 30.
It is 30, so it's not 25. Okay.
There may have been 25%.
No, it said 25 to 100, but maybe I misunderstood it. I want to give you guys. That's just I started diving into all these numbers, and it's overwhelming. But those numbers right there are just the success rate and the tag numbers for the last 9 years. Last year, it's the way I understand it is the tags your recommendations were cut by 25% approximately across the board statewide. And that was also the lowest number of tags in the last 9 years, as you see on there. It was also the lowest success rate in the last 9 years. If we've got a bunch of deer out there, I'm not understanding why the success rate is not higher if we cut the tag quotas by 25% of your recommendations. To me, that success number should have come up if those deer were there. But that's just something I came across when the other thing is, I guide in area 14, 15, and 17 mainly, and I totally agree with the gentleman here from Eureka. I'm seeing the same thing. I've been going out there every year without acceptance since 1985. I used to buy over-the-counter archery tags and go hunt every year. Spend 2 weeks every year back in the 80s and 90s scouting and hunting deer with a bow. I would see 50 to 100 bucks a day back then. If I go out there in the summer now, I spend about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks in the summer now scouting, 2 to 2.5 months all told, looking for deer in those areas. And if I go out there now in the summertime, I see 5, 8, 15 is a huge day. It very rarely happens. The numbers are down so much. The success rate the last 5 years we've had since we've had the early late seasons, the success rates last year in area 17, it was the lowest of the last 5 years. It was 28% for the rifle hunts. In area 15, there was 1 year that was lower in 09. In area 14, there was 1 year lower, and that was also 09. But other than that, that was and that was with cutting those tags back. I spent a lot of time out there. When I started out there in 05, I had a pair of 9-power Leupold binoculars. Now I've got $15,000 of optics in my back seat, and I got $5,000 Kowa binoculars that weigh 14 pounds. You can't even carry them, and I'm just not seeing them. And I don't know I don't know where they are or what the answer is, but I tend to agree with Eureka about keeping the tag quotas the same. I think if we need to raise these quotas, I don't think we take, we're raising some of these in these units here. And Mike, correct me if you're wrong. When we had our discussion on the phone the other day, you kind of agreed with me. You said that those areas are kind of worse than the rest of the state. I mean, that's what you told me after we had our initial discussion.
They're not performing as some of our units like.
Right, and
still have a high buck rate.
But we're seeing a 2.5 to 3 times increase in some of these units. I mean, when it's not, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see it, and I've never been to one of these things. I don't like it when somebody tells me how to do my job. When I get a client comes out and books a hunt and then tries to tell me what to do, and I'm not trying to tell you guys what to do. Like I said, I've never done this before for that reason, because I don't like sticking my nose in your business, and I don't pretend to know what you know about it. But this is just my observations and what I've seen, and I don't know where all the deer are hiding. So, thank you.
Judy's spelling this, man. He's got to be heard. Yeah. You're the smartest one here.
There's 2 here.
Oh, that's good. There was no comment. Huh? There was no comment. Leave that there. Mr. Chairman, name is Gerald Lent, and I want to read on that first handout there an email that was sent out from Tony Wasley, and I'd like my written comments and handouts put in the minutes, okay, and distributed with the distribution of the minutes. And basically the email that was sent out by Tony Wasley, they were talking about money, and he's talking about money issues never enter discussions involving quotas. And if you turn the page, I put a copy of the commission minutes for May 14 and 15, 2010, and I want to just read that into the record. Secretary Mayer said he would remind the commission that decisions they make on tag quotas in residents and non-residents have an impact, and that one decision the commission made on Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, that was with a non-resident that we eliminated, caused the department a $73,000 606 hit on the budget, and that does not include licenses lost, as people did not apply, and these things may not seem to be a big deal, but it can turn out to be a fiscal issue. In the next paragraph, Commissioner Macbeth said if we had that information when we removed the tag, maybe the commission would think longer and harder, and had he known that information, he may have made a different decision. This means they are selling the resources along with Commissioner Macbeth, who admits making decisions based on money. Now, I listened to I was here last meeting, and I listened to the presentation by Dr. Wasley, and he said he says he takes exceptions to some of the characterizations. He continues to read conspiracy theories about state agencies that are generating tag quotas and recommendations for the sole purpose of creating revenue for those agencies to exist. In 15 years in this agency, I've never heard of any revenue discussions with the quota setting process or modeling process. And by no means do we ever put revenue in front of the resource. Well, I just substantiated that's not true. It's not humanly possible not to think where your salary and programs are coming from, and tag sales are matched 3 to 1 and comprise most of this agency's dollars. You have to be inhuman to make statements like that. Money is always a consideration in everything we do in life, and I defy anyone to tell me different, that you're working for nothing. To say otherwise is being dishonest and is proven by these agency comments. I would like to give a couple statistics here. Bucks only last year we had 7813. This year they want to kill 15,595. That's an increase of 99.6%. All deer, 14,387 last year in 2011, 28,137 this year they're proposing in 2012. That's an increase of 95.6%. Look at the non-resident rifle, increase of 123%. Non-resident muzzleloader, increase of 58%. Non-resident archery, increase of 88%. Total with all weapons, increase of 107%. The herd size, by their numbers, 109,000 in 2011, 112,000 in 2012. That's an increase in herd size of 2.75%, an increase of 3,000 deer, which is not accurate, but let's just use that. So if you have a 40% success rate, you'll kill 11,500 animals that only grew by 3,000. We're going to kill greater than 10% of the herd that only grew 2.75%. I'll tell you how they got it. I calculate out. They back the numbers into it. And there's no science to this. If the intent is to take 10% of the herd, as they quoted other states do, other states take 10%, and we're not taking that. We're only taking 6 or 7%. And you got 112,000 deer population. That means 11,200 deer you got to kill. That's 10% of the herd. So with a success rate of 40%, divide 112,000 by 40%, and you get 28,000 deer. And you're issuing 28,100 tags. What a coincidence. I mean, there's no science to it. It's easy to back into it. And this quota that they recommended lacks 31 tags of being double. You're going to double the number of tags with 1 year observation. In the bear, you're going to at least let things run for 3 years. And if you look at the other handout I gave you, the article that Dr. Wasley said in the Vegas paper, there's 109,000 deer, and that number is arrived by tripling the deer seen from helicopters and aerial surveys. So divide that by 3, and that means they've got to see almost 40,000 deer. Show me the raw data where they count 40,000 deer. I'll bet you they don't count 40,000 deer. They never counted this many, and they never proved it with the raw data. Very, very interesting. That's what's really happening to the state. In the center part of the state, holding steady, and everything else is declining. And you've heard some testimony on that today. You can't substantiate the population. They don't know how many bucks are out there. A foremost mule deer population expert doesn't like their model either, but they're taking last year's harvest, which is 30% air, couldn't be, and they're using that to base on the buck-doe populations, because I've got the flight data here of when they flew, and they don't even fly some of these areas. And if you don't fly them in the fall, you don't know how many bucks you got, because when they fall in the spring, they don't have horns. And so how do they get buck-doe ratios? It's just a big voodoo magic where they take last year's harvest, don't account for anything that happens, and hunters aren't really the greatest, honest people in the world. I know a lot of hunters say, well, I shot a small deer, a foreghorn, and I put down unsuccessful. Or I shot a foreghorn and put in a 4-point. And so the data they take from the harvest has a big source of error, And you cannot get an accurate buck-doe ratio unless you count them. And it defies me how they can triple the population or double it in areas they don't even fly over. Let me give you an example. In area 251 and 253, 261, 268, 271, 272, and 291, they've never flown it. And yet they propose a increase in deer, or a total of 186. How can you propose a deer hunt when you've never flown an area? And, we keep hearing biology, biology, biology. It's real nice when they use biology, how they use it in different ways. But just because they say something doesn't mean there's science behind it. Guarantee you that. And the biologists don't mean they're scientists. And you got to be a scientist to really figure some of these things out, because I keep hearing their decisions are based on science. Predators, we got to have absolutely science, or we won't do any predator control. Yet we'll do this deer without science. And I think we're dealing with just a bunch of descriptive biologists. But in conclusion, you can't substantiate the population. They don't know how many bucks are out there really. It's just voodoo magic. And like I was saying before, I talked to one of the foremost mule deer population experts in the country, and he says Nevada population estimates are totally flawed. Nevada was the only state that did not participate in a western mule deer study years ago. And so Nevada has the worst population models in turning buck-doe ratios. And when we say when they were told we have the highest buck-doe ratios, they can't scientifically prove that. And everyone's drinking their Kool-Aid. The Endow model has never been audited by a reputable model specialist, and there are people like that exist in the country. There needs to be a comprehensive audit of this model by an outside independent agency. I'm really telling you that. And you should have no fear if it's all above board. And what do you have to lose? Only your credibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lent. Dr. Moley.
Mr. Chairman, Don Moldy, Reno, thanks. I just have a brief comment. Something Mr. Bruner said reminded me of something I'd heard a couple days ago, which reminded me of something I've heard in these halls many times over the years, which really pushes my button, and that is that, hey, there are deer out there. We got a lot of bucks. You know, there might be a bad winter. They may not make it. Why don't we do the deer a favor and let's shoot them in advance? Let's execute a few deer because it'll be for the better good somehow, even though the deer obviously don't get a vote. And I'm not clear really how it is for the better good. I mean, I would be tempted to speak about the godlike arrogance that concept implies, except that I'd rather give you the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that a bad year for deer, meaning a winter kill and whatnot, a bad year for deer is a good year for coyotes. A bad year for deer is a good year for mountain lions. A bad year for deer is a good year for turkey vultures when they show up again during spring migration. It's a good year for ravens. It's a good year for badgers. It's a good year for putting organic material back into the soil. And I don't think that you have any legal or moral mandate to execute deer on a crazy idea that you're doing the deer a favor. That is absolutely bizarre. It is biologically nonsensical. And it is one of the worst things about single species management. That is, ungulates get the highest place on the totem pole that seems to characterize fish and game these days. And I just want to leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moley.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Commission members, Don Stoker from Winnemucca, Humboldt County. I'm here this afternoon because I'd like to comment on this year's mule deer quotas. I killed my first deer when I was 10 years old in 1948 in Area 051. I've been hunting deer in Humboldt County for over 60 years, and it has become one of my passions. I'd like to talk about Humboldt County 031, 32, 33, 34, and 35, and 051 in particular. I also got some information on 4142, 43, 462. I think it is ludicrous and insane, and I know that's been said around here a couple of times today, to propose a quota of over 100% from last year. All these areas have had a decrease in population. As stated, statewide, there's 112,000 deer counted, 109,000 in 2011. That's a 3% or I heard a 2.9% to 3% increase. But here we're asking for over 100% increase. I can't understand it. It's ununderstandable. All the Area 3s, the 3s that I've talked about, have an increase from 331 deer to 756. That's over a 100% increase. 051, the one that we've been talking about, from 690 to 1,470 tags. It's incredible. And here we're talking about one of the worst, and they concurred to that today. It's one of the, probably one of Humboldt County is one of the worst areas we've got in the state. And then in areas 4 is 260 to 306, which is a little bit better. It's a 20% increase. These areas cannot sustain an increase of this nature. In area 051, mostly the Santa Rosas, I doubt there was 1,470 deer on that mountain. And here we are proposing a 1,470 quota in this area. And the same scenario goes for areas 3, 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35. Out of the 4 mountain ranges in areas 035, 3 have burned in the last 4 years. There's a very few deer. Last year I hunted in my favorite place. I've hunted this place for over 40 years. In fact, the 4 mountain ranges, I saw a dismal amount of deer. Nothing like I used to see. The increase in tags going from 56 to 146 tags, a whooping 260% increase. Incredible. Gentlemen, this area, because of the condition and the decrease in animals, cannot sustain this kind of numbers. I've been hunting this area for over 40 years, and I think I'm a very accomplished deer hunter after 63 years. Giving you an example, surveys for 033 were terrible. The survey was canceled because of bad weather. Didn't have a survey. 041, 42, 43, 46, no surveys done in 2008, 2009. How can you justify an increase? 051, their survey was done 200 animals less than in 2010 to 2011. And you have a proposal in front of you today for a quota of 150% increase. I don't know where they get these figures from. This gentleman was up here just now, and the other people behind. I think this state, there's a certain part of the state is probably maybe in good condition. But what I've heard here out of White Pine, out of Eureka, this gentleman out of 1-6 or 1-5, this state is not in good condition as far as deer. I can tell you that right now. Nobody's seeing them. Binoculars, great new spotting scopes. I got the same things. And I go to the same places and sit all day, starting at sun up till probably sundown, looking at canyons. There's no deer. Going back. And you are, okay, I know in Humboldt County has not been a perfect storm. The perfect storm was quoted by Tony Wasley for an increase in tags. It was quoted in the journal. But our perfect storm in Humboldt County has been a disaster. You as commissioners were smart not to increase quotas last year, and I hope you'll be smart this year because of the data and the decrease in animals. This does not justify an increase in this time in 2012. Statewide proposals for 2012 is 26, I got 26, it must be 28, 26,779 animals compared to 14,357 last year, which is an 85% increase. I guess it must be in the 90% increase. You can't increase on the data that has been presented. And as the status, and in the statewide status summary, this one got me in the first sentence of this paragraph. Limited postseason surveys resulted in 18,611 deer classified statewide, down slightly from approximate 21,600 in 2009. The slight decrease in animals classified reflects decreased survey effort rather than decreased deer. Now tell me what that sentence means. Because they didn't go out, I guess that would, if they don't go out in the survey, but they didn't see the deer, but they're going to say, hey, they're there anyway. That's exactly what that says. That's a complete estimate on on the Fish and Game's part, a complete estimate. And it's an estimate up, not down or stable. That's been one paper. Let me see, I had one other thing I wanted to say. All I got to say is that just listen to the people that come up to this podium today, including myself as far as a deer hunter is concerned, and a person that's passionate about deer hunting. This state is not in good shape, but yet the quota is going to be doubled, and I can't believe that you would possibly do that. I hope you stay with what you did last year. I really do. And have no increases for 2012. Thank you.
Dane Bradfield, Lincoln County, speaking on behalf of myself. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Wasley and Mr. Cox for the way that they've presented the data and for the way that we get the data in the status and trend books. And all of the biologists, really. I know we work closely with our biologist, Mike Scott, in Lincoln County, and that's how we arrived at the numbers that were presented to you early by Corey. We went through the department's model to get these, to make them correct. We know that, that this stuff does have an impact, and it can work. I'd like to make just a few quick comments, and I will keep this brief. I know that we have a ways to go on this. First of all is that our state should not be blanket managed. We are broken up into hunt units so that we can micromanage those units, and each one is dynamic in its own way, and we have biologists in those units that help us manage those. If not, we'd only need one biologist for the whole state, and I know that's not the way to go, and it's not the way we want it. We also have a unique opportunity. I believe this is one of the best processes for setting quotas in the western states, and the process that we're going through today. Another comment I'd like to make is that the increases proposed by the department, and I understand, I believe that we're trying to get back into the model and what we want, shooting for that 30% buck to doe ratio, but why do we need to do it in 1 year? This is something that, you know, we don't have to take real drastic increases to make it all happen right away. And it's not going to happen right away no matter what we do. But, you know, we can spread this out. Do a little now, do a little later, reevaluate, and move on it that way. Another comment I have is why the 30% buck to doe ratio? As you've heard earlier from Mr. Bronson and Mr. Lytle, that in the units which I can speak for in Lincoln County and a small portion of White Pine, that we can sustain a higher buck ratio, we feel. We have a large amount of winter range, there's not a lot of competition on it, and it's not going to be detrimental to the fawn crop. And we've actually had very high fawn ratios this last year. We had good precipitation last year. 133% of average is what it was off NOAA's website. And this year we're on track for below average so far, as you've heard already in many places. Some comments and things that I've read pertaining to social carrying capacity and possibly disregarding it. And I don't believe that can be totally disregarded, because it's our enjoyment that takes us out to the field to enjoy pursuing these animals and seeing them, hunting them, whether we have a tag or not. And how many of us take an opportunity to do something if it's not enjoyable? And I personally believe that if we're too congested, you know, it does take away from the enjoyment, or possibly even cause frustration. So I don't believe that the social carrying capacity can be completely thrown out. And also on that, with large amounts, we believe that it also has an effect on the hunter success, as it can go down if areas get too congested. And I just hope you'll take these points into consideration as you guys go through the decision processes. And thank you for your time.
Dr. Dixon.
I decided to name Paul Dixon. I'm going to speak on behalf of myself as a scientist and a professional who's done a lot with data and statistics for the last 20 years in my job. My job has always been determining things probabilistically and trying to figure stuff out. And first off, I want to thank our two wildlife biologists sitting up here for big game. They gave probably the best presentation of why, even though we have deer herd numbers that appear to be constant, you looked at what they said about the buck ratios, about does, and what we need to do with carrying capacity. All those things have been obliterated. Everybody keeps coming back to strict numbers. I'm not seeing deer, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. A quote that I heard the other night from a person I respect was, why are we having these guys get in helicopters and planes and fly and do surveys and risk their lives every year if we're just going to come to this meeting and say, well, I believe that guy who doesn't have a degree in biology, but he goes out and he glasses and he doesn't see deer in the spot where he's hunted for the last 30 years. Well, guess what? Deer move. Maybe you should hunt in a different spot, or maybe you should hunt differently than you are. To be honest with you, they've given us every reason why we should harvest the bucks and get our buck-to-doe ratio lower. They've given us every reason why we should harvest the does that we're going to harvest out of our population, because it'll make the herd healthier. It will make it grow. And even if they're totally wrong, and we get to next year and we don't see recruitments like we should be seeing in the fall fawns and in the spring stuff, we can make adjustments. We're not going to destroy this deer herd with this harvest objective that we have out there. But I highly doubt they're wrong. They're professionals. We pay them to do this. We pay them to risk their lives in doing surveys and go out and do stuff. If we're not going to do that, then I'll have them sit in their office and we can all send them an email and tell them what we want, and they'll just write it up and bring it to this board. Because that's what we've been doing. We need to listen to them. They're professionals and they're doing their job right. Thank you.
Darren Elmore speaking on the behalf of myself. I'm a Washoe County resident, a sixth-generation Nevadan. My family's had property in Elko County for over the 50 years, and in no way am I here to slight the Elko County cab or the fine professionals at Endo. Area 6 is looking at a 184% tag increase. I can swallow that with the science. I think it's justified, it's biologically proven. I have two concerns, however. One being the hunter density. Last year, in 2011, there were a total of 968 individuals holding big game tags from October 5th to October 20th. This year, that number stands to be 2,825, given the approved quotas earlier and a mule deer quota for residents of 1,700 plus tags. So hunter density is going to be an issue. My second concern is in regards to a thriving elk herd. The Area 6 elk herd, without question, is potentially out of control. We've got elk and antelope country right now with an antlerless success of 20% at the greatest. So we have an incredibly low success rate. And my concern with this is that by flooding 2,600 additional hunters in the unit, what's going to happen to continue to happen with the elk herd, that at some point we're going to have to get a manage on for various different reasons. Thank you.
Rick Smith, Washoe Cab. I'm just going to speak briefly. Just our board, just for the record, voted to support the recommendations of the department, and in no way do we question the other cabs and their opinions as far as their own individual areas, because they certainly know it better than we do. So we would stand behind whatever changes the cabs would like to see. But as far as Washoe County goes, we believe that we have to trust the science based on the input from the biologist. We don't think they have anything to gain by trying to, as you say, cook the books or stack the deck or anything like that. And these guys are professionals. They're paid to do a job, and we have to trust them. So that's where we stand.
Okay, any other public comment?
Commissioners, Judy Caron for the record. Speaking as myself, a private citizen, first I want to say thank you to everybody for volunteering their time, serving for this. I think we do have one of the best systems that's envied by the rest of the country, by our Wildlife Commission. the county advisory boards that come forward, the sportsmen. One thing I want to reiterate, I think we have honest hunters in our state. I take offense to a past commissioner saying for our data and our science, and possibly the way the hunters report our harvest data. I take great offense about that, and I wanted to get up and say that. What we say on the public record is being projected to the non-hunting community, the non-consumptive users, and the legislators. I think the science and the data that we are looking at today is of the best that we have from our department. I have trust in the individuals. The only thing that I can see that really came out of this different than over the last 10 or 15 years is possibly we need a workshop, just like we're going to do for the Bear Committee, the Heritage Committee, to hash some of this out before it gets to this level to save time. I just think that's something we should look at, but I want to thank everybody for their time, and I agree with the department's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission then. Any comments from the commission? Commissioner Rain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, last year, looks like we harvested about a little over 16% of our bucks. This year, with the 112,000 estimation and the recommended quota, you're talking about roughly 32% of the projected bucks being harvested this year, providing we have roughly the same success as last year. Looking at those general numbers, not only is it double the number of tags, but it's double the percentage of bucks that are out there. Is that a good idea? With these quota levels, if they are maintained statewide, one would predict that we would be hearing from a large number of hunters who'll be wondering why we're putting out these tags in areas with so few deer when they get out there and they're wandering around saying, where's the deer? Why do we throw out all these tags? Our success rates will fall, I predict that, and our populations will also fall. And next year, a little earlier in the year than this, we'll probably be hearing one of the, I don't know what you want to call them, reasons, justifications, excuses, habitat, drought, too many cows, something. Gee, why is it down? No. Couldn't have been that we're killing all the too many doe. Couldn't be that we're killing too many bucks. Last year, it's interesting. What changed between last year and this year? We had a recommended quota from the department last year of just over 10,000, and this year it's 15,500. Yeah, there's some changes out in the field, but statewide, on average, the main thing that changed was you killed a whole lot less bucks last year. Thank you very. If that's it, great. Thank the previous commission because they made a great decision, and obviously, if they were able to recommend that last year and this year, well, what happened if you kept a reasonable quota for next year? Not that I would recommend necessarily cutting the entire state, but another 25% below the 7,800 last year. Some units definitely, but not necessarily the entire state. Some areas are indeed doing fairly well. I do take great offense to some things, and I'm sure many other people take great offense to my statement as well, but that when the justifications are unnecessary quota reductions 2011, I'd say they were necessary, they were justified, they were based upon the best science. Increase this year are not so. That is not true. Maybe? Okay, great. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the model is wonderful. The idea of, so let's resolve this issue to some degree. Get an independent audit of the model. If it's flawed, then great. What do you got to lose? We'll have a new model. Get somebody in that's got no association with anything. Maybe some guy that does great modeling. Look at it. Give some good suggestions. If it's a great model, great. Prove it. model appears that is flawed and needs a grounding in true science. If we do have a jump in deer population, then great, let's wait until they grow up. Let's wait a couple years and then shoot them. We don't need to be shooting little deer. You know, I signed on to this process as a sportsman, not as someone that goes out and shoots yearling deer. I think somebody, you know, mistake that with, don't want to mistake sportsman with somebody kills a yearling, babies. We don't need to be doing that. That's the wrong impression statewide. I understand I can do commission math as well as some people, perhaps not well as others, and there's going to some people have the favor, they want to go out and whack them and stack them deep. Whatever the motivations are, they seem, I don't agree with those motivations. Maybe it's possible that it's financial. Maybe it's possible that they think it's healthy for the deer to whack them and stack them. Well, I think that's wrong. But if you're going to do it in a few areas. Don't do it everywhere where the cabs say not to. And, I mean, if I had my druthers, I'd say, hey, don't do it. Keep them reasonable everywhere. That's not the case. Have a control group. Pick these units that are picked out by the cabs. Keep pretty low hunts in those units. And say, hey, maybe if next year, and give it a couple years, if the ones we're whacking and stacking deer by the gazillion, if they're looking great and the others looking bad, then you know. If it's the other way, then it's the other way. You'll know. I recommend basically that we go along with cab recommendations on just about everything we're looking at here. Thank you.
Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, just a couple of items. I think Commissioner Raines touched on one thing that I'd like to talk about, and it's the definition of sportsman. And I think that definition's a little bit different for everyone. And for any one of us to say I represent what all sportsmen feel or what they believe or what makes a quality hunt is a vast overstatement to what we should be making. We've got people who want an opportunity to go out and harvest a buck or maybe even see a buck. And to them, that's a trophy quality hunt. And we've got people who want to go out and see what we've got on the wall. And somehow we've got to balance that. This isn't about what I think as an individual. This is about taking into account what the department gives us as a starting point biologically and what the people that are in this room today collectively feel is the best way to move forward. I haven't heard anything from the cabs that's egregious. I think they came with some very well-defined reasons as to their justifications. And so I really don't have a lot of heartburn with what the cabs have brought us. I think most of their reasons for limited or reduced quotas in certain areas are based off either social considerations or a desire not to get all the way down to 30 bucks per 100 does. And if that's what they feel is desired in their particular area of the world, I don't have a problem with that. But to make blanket statements that I as an individual represent everyone's viewpoint, or that I as an individual know my science is better than someone who does it for a living, is outrageous. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. Mr. Rob.
I only have a couple brief comments, but the one thing I know for sure is I've never seen a buck give a fawn, so I don't know how keeping bucks out there is going to increase in deer herd. I mean, that's not going to happen. The other thing I do know is there's probably nobody in this room that hasn't had friends walk away from hunting. And they didn't walk away from hunting because they got tired of hunting. The ones I know that walked away because they got tired of not getting tags. And it's our job to give that opportunity. And I may take some heat for giving some of that opportunity, but I think that's what we owe the people of this state that want to hunt.
Anybody else?
Whenever you're ready.
Not yet. Yes. I guess this is really a tough issue. You know, I agree with Commissioner Robb, and and Commissioner Drew with regard to, sportsmen and hunter opportunity. I am a little concerned personally about the congestion issue in some of the units that I'm familiar with. I gave examples of guys that have been applying for 4 or 5 years to get a tag, and they get that tag, and they're going to go out there in a situation that hasn't been there for a number of years, and so they're gonna have a whole different experience. But what I've been saying, that I said that to the Clark County Cab, and they turned around and voted to approve the department's recommendation. Went to breakfast with a friend this morning and made the same statement to him. And he's from Southern Nevada, but he's lived in Northern Nevada for since 1987 and been hunting with his family and son. And he just made it very clear that he and his friends and his family are looking for hunter opportunity. They want to go hunting. So this is it's a tough issue. Some of the ideas that have been thrown out are to okay, if we need to go to $30 per doe, I mean, can we, do we have to do it all in 1 year? Could it be phased in? Obviously if it's just going to take longer and longer to get where we want to be as far as the 30. I can understand that, and I can also understand that if something, if we have really tough winters, that would obviously create problems. Deer would die, and we'd lose that opportunity. So, I guess those are the things I was hoping to hear, maybe from the commission as to any ideas that they have. But ultimately, from a biological standpoint, I'm obviously the model, and comfortable with what the numbers are and what these quota recommendations are, and so mostly the social issue of hunt quality for me that's the part I'm still having heartburn with. Commissioner Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question I have of Mike and Tony, maybe you could clear up. We heard comments today, probably more than a couple times, about higher quotas, higher hunter congestion, and lower success rate. How do you guys treat that in your model? Is that a consideration, or could you maybe explain what you guys do with the model to deal with that?
There isn't a single simple answer. What we do, the direct input to the model is the harvest by point class. That's removed directly from the population, and that tells us what should be remaining according to age class, so we can look at age class distribution remaining. But we rely on the harvest data quite heavily. We look at not only hunter success, but we look at percent 4-point or better in the harvest, and we look at trends. I think that we have some pretty good examples, where we see a combination of factors that point to a problem in an area. We may see 3 or 4 things occurring simultaneously where sample size continues to diminish. At the same time, hunter success continues to go down. And we may even maintain a high percent 4-point or better in the harvest, but that could be because we don't have any recruitment coming into the population. And so we look at that harvest level, we look at what we've been able to sustain in terms of harvest level historically in that population, given similar sample sizes. So the model is a population model, but we go a step above in trying to monitor the harvest data and make sure there's quality. But one thing that I need to say about some of this hunter success stuff is that we have this diverse demands, that we're trying to balance demands. We have these opportunity hunters, and then we have trophy hunters, and we don't have an abundance of mule deer to be able to have sacrifice areas to allow people to hunt each and every year, and then have limited draw areas like some states do, most states as a matter of fact. So what we tried to do, I believe it was 2007, was to actually decrease hunter success in an early season and increase hunter success in a late season. The idea is the people that just want to go out with their friends and family can go out and they can have 25% hunter success with 33% 4-point or better in the harvest, and you can have a large number of people for a short duration of time and have an opportunity hunt. Then following that, you can have a longer hunt closer to the rut, cooler weather with some snow, the leaves are off the trees, and you see hunter success creep up to 50, 60% and percent 4-point or better in the harvest at 60, 70, 75%. So some of that hunter success, sometimes we're comparing apples and oranges and we don't have a real long-term trend, but the longer we have a hunt structure in place in an area, the more valuable that harvest data is for us.
Any other? Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listening to the biologists, listening to the cabs, some of the cabs have brought forth some real information and actually have a plan. My tendency is to go with the biology, and I'd like to hear maybe some motions on the table because quite frankly, listening to this and putting the numbers on here, I don't know that I got them all. Because some of them actually came up and said they'd like to change some stuff. They didn't specifically say, and you got to go in and dig it out of the paper. So I kind of like to see where everybody else is at too, because I mean, at this point, I have a tendency to follow the department mostly. Thank you.
Commissioner Drew.
I'm willing to try a motion, and before I make it, I think what I'm going to state is I think I incorporate a lot of what the cabs have suggested. Like I said, I don't think there's anything egregious with what they've done. I think there's some social considerations. My recommendation is going to be a little off from the departments, and that shouldn't be a slight to the department. In my opinion, you guys provided us with the starting point we needed to duke out the social issues, and so we're going to start with a motion and see where it goes. So with that, I'm just going to run through the list. I would make a motion that for Hunt 1331, we accept the department's recommendation for units 011, 013 early and late, 014 early and late, 015, 021, 022. For unit 031, we'd use Humboldt County's recommendation of 128. For 032, we'd use Humboldt County's recommendation of 80. For 033 early, what I've put in here is a split between Humboldt and Washoe. So 033 early, what I'm proposing would be 55. 033 late would be 25. 034 would be 20. 035 would be 56. 041, 042 would be 34. 043 to 046 early, 171. 043 to 046 late, 55. 051 early per Humboldt's recommendation, 213. Late would be 24. Area 6 early as recommended. Area 6 late as recommended. 065 as recommended. Area 7 early and late as recommended. 081 as recommended. Area 10 early, mid, and late as recommended. 113 or 111 to 113, excuse me, early per White Pine recommendation 425. Late would be 48. 114, 115 early 62. Late 16. 121 early 199. Late 10. 13 early 234. 13 late 13. The department's recommendation for area 14 early and late. The same with area 15 early and late. 161 to 164 early per Nye County's recommendation at 319. Late at 37. 171 to 173 early, 459. Late would be 114. 181 to 184 per the department's recommendation, as well as 192. 194, 196, 195 per Story County's recommendation of 20. Department's recommendation for area all area 20. That's 201, 204, as well as 202, 205, and 206. 203 per department recommendation. 211, 212 per department recommendation. 221, all area 22, early and late per Lincoln County recommendation. So early would be 560, late would be 30. 231 per Lincoln Cab recommendation at 177. Area 24 per Lincoln County recommendation of 97. 251 to 253 per Nye County recommendation of 36. And the remaining 3 per department recommendations.
Nye County, you used their recommendations for areas 16 and 17?
Yes. Correct.
And 14 and 15?
No.
As recommended.
As recommended.
Did Eureka County not put in a?
They did.
Yeah, and actually I would amend, well, I don't think we've got a second, but for Eureka, I would do the county recommendations at this time for discussion.
Okay, you had a second.
I had
What units are we talking on that?
141 to 145 early and late. So it'd be 239 and 28. Is that how they suggested it?
In 151?
Per recommendation.
That wasn't part of Eureka.
Okay. Okay, we got a motion and a second.
I'd like to amend the motion.
Do we want to have some discussion about what we have first? Why don't we discuss it? Why don't you tell us what your issue is, and let's all discuss what we have on the table.
You want me to?
What was your? Do you have?
Well, I was just
Al?
going to say. Obviously, I didn't write down everything he whistled off there, but why don't we just say all the CAB's recommendations to be included?
I think we pretty much have them unless someone can correct me.
Well, it's just, that's simpler. All the CAB's recommendations would be included in the motion, and then the non-resident numbers would correspond afterwards.
There was one difference in 033 early and late. That was a kind of a split between what Humboldt and Washoe had done. I just wanted to be clear with what the numbers were so we were all on the same page. And if I missed something, someone can correct me.
A small discrepancy in 221 through 223 between White Pine and Lincoln, and you noted White or Lincoln's numbers, and you know that's fine. I just wanted to let you guys know that.
Yeah, and I was all right with that.
Well, they have to figure it out.
Yeah, Lincoln's number to give more hunter opportunity than White Pine. So I see what you did.
They put it up there.
Well, are we going to have any discussion? I mean, you know, just like for instance, if we look at Lincoln's recommendations and their spreadsheets, they're obviously managing for a higher buck-to-doe ratio than what the department has recommended, you know, I guess the question is you know, is that where we should be going? And to be quite honest, I don't know. You know, we look at some of the other states, and we know that they have units that they manage for higher, you know, quality. You know, these, you know, the Ponsagant and units like that, and where they have these real high buck-to-doe ratios. But is that what, you know, the sportsmen in Nevada want? I talked to Director Mayer about, how do we know what the sportsmen want? Do we really know what the sportsmen want because of the guys that sit on the county advisory boards, which happen to be a lot more passionate, more than likely to be trophy hunters as opposed to hunters that are just looking for the opportunity? Because from what I'm seeing coming from counties like Washoe and Clark, they don't have that same focus. What we talked about is maybe doing a survey, some kind of a survey where we go out and we find out what the sportsmen. And I mean a real survey where we actually hire professionals to determine what the public really wants. Obviously, it doesn't do us much